Hello and welcome. My name is Whitney and I'm an anesthesia intern documenting my journey as I go through my first year of residency. I finished up my first week of my general surgery block, so I will be talking about that in today's video and just looking at what the week looked like overall for me. Just as a quick reminder, I am doing something called a transitional year for my first year of residency or my intern year, and I talk about that more in a previous video. But just as a little reminder or recap of what that is your intern year, we're not necessarily like jumping into learning about anesthesia right away. This first year is really about just solidifying a lot of information that we learned in medical school, so we have a really firm foundation of just general medical knowledge before we dive into the more specifics of anesthesia. So this year, I'm not only doing like internal medicine or just doing surgery. I'm in a program where we're doing a little bit of everything. So I have internal medicine rotations, I have one surgery rotation this year for this program. But I also do like emergency medicine and a bunch of different electives. So there's a lot of variety in this year. And yeah, I'm getting into my general surgery block. There's only one of the general surgery blocks in this program here, so I'm getting into it. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what the week looked like. I figured in this video today, I'll just talk about kind of like the general structure of the day and what we do. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so to start talking about what the day looks like on the general surgery service, I'll first just say that this is a rotation that is 6 days a week, so it is a little bit longer. And the day usually starts around like 5:30 to 5:45 in the morning is when the interns show up. So that's when I was showing up to the hospital. We get there a little bit before 6 a.m., which is when sign out occurs, just because we have to do a few things before then. So when we get to the hospital, pretty early in the morning, we get our list of patients and we go on to the computer and look at pretty much like how our patients did overnight in terms of like objective information. So we're gathering all the information we can about them in terms of like their vital signs, like were they stable overnight, were they not stable overnight? What kind of lab values do they have this morning? Are there like any concerning lab values that we need to be aware of? And also things called I's and O's, which is just ins and outs. And that's really just looking at the fluid status of a patient if we're like wondering how their fluid status is. So in the morning, we're looking at the computer and writing those down on our list of patients. And usually how this works is we have like our list of patients and then the interns will just divide it up equally as best as we can so that we're all like writing down, like the patient's objective information as we can. And then at 6 o'clock, we are around for sign out. And sign out is when we just hear from the night team, like how the patients did overnight as well. Can be a little bit more subjective because sometimes you hear about like patients in terms of like if they had any symptoms overnight, like throwing up or having chest pain or whatever it is. So between us looking at the computer and getting sign out from the night team, we have a lot of information about the patients before we even go and round with the team. One other thing that happens in the morning is that we are lucky enough to be working with medical students who go and actually talk to the patients as well. So they will go and check on the patients and ask them how they're doing too. So that's just another layer of information that we have before we actually go and round with the team. Then around 7 is when we would go round on the patients as a team. And by rounding, I just mean like we go and talk to the patients and go over the plan for them as an entire team. So with the team that I was on, we were called the ACS team or the acute care surgery team. And we were a pretty big group, actually. There were 3 interns, 2 surgery senior residents, an attending, and then also 2 medical students. So it was quite a big group. And we would just go around the hospital and talk to all the patients who potentially had to have surgery or had a concern that, surgery team could help or deal with, I guess you could say. And yeah, we would just go around and see all the patients. It was kind of nice as interns. We didn't really have to present or do much on rounds, honestly. We would just go around and listen. Usually it was the senior surgery resident who was like actually talking to the patient and talking to the attending and figuring out the plan. And as interns, all we really had to do was just write down what they were saying because we would be the ones putting in orders and writing the notes later on. So we just needed the information, but we didn't actually have to like present or, like talk to anyone. It was kind of nice. I talked about in a previous video working on the internal medicine service where you're doing like all of that. You're presenting and talking to patients and talking to the attending, and it can be really a lot. So this kind of felt like a nice little like relaxing time. Honestly, it wasn't too bad. And as long as I was just listening in and made sure I didn't miss any of the information, I really didn't feel like it was too stressful. It was nice. Rounding for us would take usually about like an hour, hour and a half, which also isn't too bad. It didn't take too much time, even though we were, seeing quite a few patients. The visits are a little bit quicker when you're doing a surgery service rather than like an internal medicine service. So that was pretty nice. So we were finished up usually between like 8:30 and 9, which left a big chunk of the day to work on everything. So after we were done with rounds, the team would kind of disperse and we would all do different things. So like the surgery residents would actually go to the operating room and do surgery on the patients that we were seeing. And then the interns, we had the choice. We could go to the OR and, do surgery, scrub in, do all that stuff, but we didn't have to. So like myself and my co-interns, we didn't end up doing that. We decided to just go back to work on our notes and put in orders. And the flexibility was actually very nice. I felt like it was nice to be able to just go and get all of our like have to do things done as quickly as we could, just because there were other things going on during the day. So for us, it was nice to just be able to like, as soon as we were done with rounds, just to go back to the computer and work on putting in all of the orders that we talked about during rounds and then doing notes as well. So we were still pretty busy. We just weren't, with the entire team doing surgery in the OR. Then, after we were all finished with our notes and putting in orders, we were really just waiting around to see if there were going to be any consults that we had to see. As interns, we were kind of the ones in charge of if there was a new consult coming in that we would have to go and actually like talk to them and see them at first. So we were just waiting around to see if anyone was going to be coming in. The day really was variable depending on how many consults we had. There were some days where we saw like one patient. There was even a day where we didn't see any new patients. But there were other days where we had like 9 consults or new patients. So there was a lot of variety and it really made your day look very different depending on how many new patients that you saw. And that was pretty much our day. We would just wait to see how many consults we would get until about 5 p.m. when sign out occurs. And then we would hopefully be done with the day and go home. There were a couple days that I had to stay a little bit late just because if you get a late consult, everything is pushed back a little bit just because you are working on, helping this new patient and getting everything figured out and settled for them. So I would say most days I left around 5. There was a couple days that I left a little bit later. But overall, not too bad of a first week. I feel like the first week of any rotation, especially like a new one that you've never done before, is a little bit more stressful just because you're trying to figure out like the flow and get everything down. So this week was a little bit more stressful, but I would say overall it wasn't super intense. It was just me feeling like new and unsure of how things were going. I'm hopeful that with these next couple of weeks, I'll get a little bit more comfortable with it, and by the end of it, I'll feel like it's not too bad overall. But yeah, that was my first week of my general surgery rotation of intern year. All right, well, that is all that I have for you for my first week of my general surgery rotation. I feel like the first week for me, when I'm on a new service, I'm really just trying to figure out like the general flow and schedule of things. So that's really what I like sharing with you all during my first week on a new rotation. But I still have 3 more weeks, so hopefully I'll be able to share like a little bit more detail and information as we go along. But for now, we'll go ahead and end the video by looking at how many hours I worked this week. And I will say that general surgery is known as being kind of a more hours intense rotation. So let's go ahead and look at how many hours I worked this week. So, like I said before, yep, usually showing up to the hospital pretty early around 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, and you're working pretty much all day until 5:30. There was one day we got off a little bit early on Saturday at 4:30, which was nice. It's always nice when you get a little bit of extra time on the weekends. And yeah, worked a total of 70 hours this week, so pretty heavy hours wise. I think it's really hard too because Thursday's my day off. I don't have a weekend day off, so it's been kind of hard to adjust with like the people not on this rotation and like my husband who obviously like isn't on this kind of schedule. So That's been a little bit tricky, but I'm hoping that it'll just be an adjustment. And, it's only 4 weeks. I've already got a week down. So kind of just got to push through it. But yep, that is all that I have for you today. I will see you next week as I am finishing up my second week of general surgery. Take care, everyone.